A very good Thursday night Stat Race Lens users live from Churchill Downs. At least 2 out of 3 of us are live from Churchill Downs. Craig Walker out on the West Coast waiting on Laffit Pincay after a unusual afternoon here at Churchill Downs. A system-wide outage that was rather mysterious is delayed the NBC telecast. So we'll get started, and there's so much to talk about. And when Laffit is finished, he'll join me here at the parlay at the media center. And Craig, until then, we could probably spend enough time just talking about the Pincay Mile, given the depth of this field and an always interesting scenario where so many of the 3-year-olds turn back after trying things like the Derby Trail races. You look at a horse like No Dozing, a perfect example, or Uncontested. A lot to look at as we get started with the Pincay Mile on Saturday. Yeah, this is an interesting race, and I really think this entire card is pretty challenging. So there's a lot of good racing. Fields are deep, and there's going to be good payoffs. You probably only have to be right in 1 or 2 races to make a score this weekend. Always the case, no matter what your approach to days like this, Triple Crown race card days, Breeders' Cup days, whenever you've got the depth of fields and the pool size, if you're a horizontal or a vertical player, this is your kind of day and days. So let's dive in. The Pincay Mile will go as the 8th race on Saturday, post time 2:45, mid-card, and it's a race that is really integral in a lot of different multi-race wagers. Right, because it starts off the pick 5 for people who are willing to tackle that, and ending with the Derby. And so my top pick in this race is No Dozing, number 5. Sorry, I got to go to the right race. You jump to the 8th race. So number 5, No Dozing. The first thing I liked about him is the last race he earned an Equibase speed figure of 107. When you see that the speed rating and the highlighting is green and circled green, then you know that's the highest of any horse in the field. And so when you mouse over it, it'll also tell you that. It also tells you the other matches for that number of 107. So I like that horse ran. He's ran the best race of anyone in the field, and that it was in his most recent start. Right? Many times that's a good sign. Sometimes with certain 3-year-olds, they can bounce off it, but for me, I think this horse is gonna keep on improving. And so the other thing that I like about the horse is the trainer. He has when we look in the header here, we always have the different situational statistics. And so for the distance and surface, so that would mean whatever's matching today. So since today is a mile on the dirt, that means dirt routes. And when you mouse over it, it'll tell you that on the label. So he doesn't have a lot of starts, but out of the 36 starts that he's had for dirt routes, he's won 33% of the time and 72% in the money with a plus 3% ROI. So you know that this trainer with that high in the money percentage in a general category like that is getting his horses ready, on a day-to-day basis all the time. And so that's a good sign for me as well. And then also lately I've been kind of noticing that jockey Joel Rosario has been on a nice streak. He's been winning some nice races, and when you look in the header over here, and you look at under the jockey's name for the last 30 days, you can see out of his 82 starts, he's won 28% of the time, and has a positive ROI of 8%. So that's a sign that a jockey's on a nice roll whenever they have numbers like that. I don't know. What did you think of this horse, Steve?
This has been a problematic horse, and going into the start of the winter season and going to Tampa, there was such expectation that he and of course Motown and the horses out of the Remsen were going to be prominent and were going to be major players heading into the Derby Trail, and then basically what we ended up with is everybody going sideways. And while I happen to love turnbacks at this time of year, I'm not convinced as of yet that No Dozing is a one-turn horse. And I'm not sure if this is the spot, considering that there are horses that I think we can project, whether we're going to use trainer turnback stats on somebody like Catalano with uncontested. I think there's horses that are going to enjoy the return to one turn, and I'm just not sure what to make of No Dozing. And until Delacour demonstrates that he has figured him back out, much like all the other horses out of the Remsen, I'm against. I mean, Motown went nowhere, and so did No Dozing, and I think we want somebody like an uncontested in here that is going back to that one turn. And maybe I know that that's one of the horses that you've got amongst your potential bets. Pull up some Catalano stats on turnback.
So you're looking at uncontested, right? The number 4 horse.
Yeah.
Right. So let me see. The only thing is I don't think that unfortunately we don't have the this is something that's we're gonna be adding in the future. Unfortunately, we don't have it when it's a one turn mile. Like right now, everything we do where it's a turn back, it's from a route to a sprint. So anything 8 furlongs or longer
is
a
that's
route.
fine.
Anything less than a sprint. Yeah. So that's the only thing is that we don't. I can still look at it, but it won't be 100% fit. But I can bring it up, no problem. So we'll do it. But in the future, we are going to have that. We're just working on other things right now, but it's going to be added to the pipeline soon. So I'll just modify this. And we're just going to we'll just look at dirt races, I guess.
Similarly, you're looking at an opportunity with a horse like Sonic Mule as well. He's going to return back to an elongated sprint and fits the profile in here. Another one that makes some sense. And you've also got Wild Shot coming out of the Bluegrass. He's going to get back to the one turn for Rusty Arnold. So to me, horses like this are just a little bit. I got a little preference for them to No Dozing, who I just think the jury is out on right now.
Right, I understand what you're saying. So if you see here so for the past 5 years, route to sprint on the dirt, Catalano, this is like just okay. I mean the win percentage is good, 17%. I mean that's definitely above average. But then when you see the ROI is -36, you know that those type of horses are getting bet when he does it. So it's just it's okay. It wouldn't sway me one way or the other as far as if you were just looking at route to sprint stats. But like I said, it's not the exact match of what's going on today. So we can look at when we look at the true odds for this race. And so one thing for me that the way this race came up is down here in the race projection commentary. It says it looks like there will be a speed deal early on in this contest, and watch for horses coming from off the pace. So I mean, it does look like the 12 can get the lead on the projection off pace figures, but the other thing that we look at is the run style. So if we sort on run style, I mean, we see all these horses that have an E, which means that it's an early run style. When you mouse over these letters, it will tell you that that's what is determined. There's algorithms that Stats has come up with, and when it goes through the running lines, it determines that these horses, their style is early. When you see a P horse, that's a presser, so that's a horse who's normally going to be 3, 4, 5 lengths off the pace in general. And then we have the S is sustained, so that's a horse that's going to be 5 lengths, 10 lengths back or more. Horses can also be sustained pressers or early pressers, and they have the designation on that they tend to run either way depending on the race. So that's just another way to help you analyze the race. So since this race was projected to have lots of early speed, for me, one thing that I go to look at is this late pace column. So this is a number that the stats team has devised, and I sort it from highest to lowest. And so when I do it in this case, that brings number 10, You're to Blame, to the top. So for me, when I see a field of a lot of early speed types, and there's a lot of kind of question marks, like you said, horses are turning back, some are suspect. I mean, whenever there's lots of chaos, that's when I'm going to, a lot of times, play the horse that has the best late pace rating. And so in this case, it would be number 10, You're to Blame. Also, if we go to the PPs, we'll jump down here to number 10. I mean, we see that Chad Brown is the trainer, and like in so many of his stats, I mean, these statistics are things for today. You see that the win percentages, I mean, are green and underlined. That means that they're highly above average win percentages. So, and of course, Javier Castellano's on them as well. So all that just, for me, is just the race could set up for this horse, and he could come flying at the end. And so that's why, because of the price, I would play this horse as well. And so those were kind of my top two horses, was No Dozing and number 5, and then number 10, You're to Blame. One other thing, so I'll go back to the true odds.
We're going to reach over your shoulders real quick. We'll try not to bother.
So when I sort it here now, so there are two of the horses that you talked about, Uncontested and Sonic Mule, do have the adjusted true odds highlighted. So what that means right now is that they could offer value. So their odds are lower than the morning line odds. When the live odds start coming in, then the adjusted true odds will compare the predicted odds for a fair bet to the actual odds of the race, and then the highlighting will be based on that. But so I know that you have a reason to like both of those horses. The only thing is I have, if I go back to the PPs, besides positive angles that we've seen before, I also have gone through and developed some negative angles, and they get highlighted in red. And so both of those horses had angles that are bothersome to me, and it doesn't mean that when I'm handicapping I always go against these type of horses, but a lot of times I'm going to temper my enthusiasm for them, and in a race like this, I will end up playing against them. So with Uncontested, when I mouse over the angle up here, so this angle is he's had back-to-back poor races, and then his last race equibase speed figure is less than the class rating minus 5 points. So the class rating for a race is always up in the race header here. So 104. That means that we expect the winner of this race is normally going to run an equibase speed figure of 104 to win the race. That just gives you a ballpark number. So when you're looking at the past performances, you can kind of think, will this horse be competitive or not, just based on speed figures. So this horse, his last race was a 90. So because of the two poor efforts and the low speed rating, this angle, we can look at the numbers on it. And the way you do that is you just click on the name of the angle. And we see that, I mean, this is about as bad as things could get. When you see a 7% win percentage, and then 9 and 10% place and show, that, I mean, that success score, anything below 5 is on the negative side for sure. And when you see a minus 32% ROI, you know that that's an angle that's very negative. Because if you were just to randomly, pick a name out of a hat to play a horse every race, you're going to hit around a negative 25% ROI. So this is doing quite a bit worse than random betting. So this is an angle that I would normally not play these types of horses. And then just the other horse.
That's nice. That's a terrific piece.
And then the other horse is Sonic Mule. And so if I look at his angle, so he's off a layoff right now of so whenever it's a layoff of more than 45 days, and none of the works are 5 furlongs or longer in the last 2 weeks, that has turned out to be a negative angle. When I click on it, it's not as bad as the one we just looked at, but it still is 12% winners with a 3.7 success score and negative 29% ROI. So just in general, this one isn't quite as negative angle, so I wouldn't demote a horse as much as the other angle. But that's the type of things that that in Racelands I look for to, when I'm researching stuff, trying to when I'm playing with things, trying to figure out angles that I can put into the system, and then in the future that's going to help me play against horses or not play them as much as I normally would, because they have maybe some holes that aren't obvious right away.
And of course, that, as it happens, that piece is just a tiny bit esoteric, because actually there was a 5 furlong work 15 days out, so it
right. Yeah, exactly.
One of those things where it's a matter of degrees, and plus, particularly, especially because we've been sitting here for 2 weeks in Louisville watching works, and even though a lot of the Pletcher, for instance, the Pletcher works will be published typically half a mile, the instructions are to gallop out, and these are horses that that might go 49 flat and then gallop out 102 and then gallop a double gallop out in 114, 115. So they're actually working between 4 and 5.5 furlongs. But Pletcher's horses are almost always going to be published as half miles, occasionally as 5 furlong work.
Right, that's a good point, and I totally understand what you're getting at, and yeah, and so then what I would do normally, a lot of times what I'll do is when I have an angle like that, a general angle, I will go and just add the trainer's name to that angle, and then just save it out as a separate angle, and then just to see with that trainer, does he follow the same pattern? Is it being bad or not? So just so you know, that's kind of where I would go from there, especially on something that like that information that you understand. That's I would take another step further. So that's one of the good things about Racelands is it's very easy to make changes and adapt it and get your answers within a minute or so.
Well, just got an answer actually from Laffit, and NBC is continuing coverage. And, of course, everything was pushed back close to an hour. And as a result, they're about 8 minutes to post for this Kentucky Juvenile Stake, where the Violence filly, the first runner for Stallion Violence, is going to try to beat the boys. and buy, sell, hold for Steve Asmussen and the Robesons. And right now she's 6-5, and little petite reddish roan filly, and she's going to go out and mix it up with the boys. Let's stay with it, and we'll do another race before Laffit is able to join us after the NBC coverage ends. And let's stay right where we are. 9th race that follows the Pate Mile, and here's another 3-year-old restricted stake, and a very good one. The 3-year-old turf division that'll ultimately gather at Belmont for the Rich Belmont Derby, really coming together nicely. And most of these have already kind of gotten their 3-year-old turf season underway. And Craig, there's a number of interesting horses and a lot of angles, including horses that have come from California. Dive into your thoughts on that American Turf, the 9th race on Saturday.
Yeah, so this is for me the race that's gonna make or break my weekend, and it's mainly because the horse I like is we're out here in California, so it's a West Coast horse that I've been watching his last couple of races, and that's Conquest Fahrenheit. I mean, this horse, when I've watched the last 2 races, I just think he can be any type of turf horse. I think his potential upside is really big, and you never know with these kind. You know how the young horses are, but I just think this horse has a chance to be something special. I know in some of the past seminars we've talked about how Conquest Stable broke up, and they had the dispersal, and they had the sale, and at the key they had sold it at the Keeneland November breeding sale, and so you can see that this horse was bought for $735,000. So it was a healthy sum for a horse that had only run twice, and it had run twice at Woodbine, and as you can see when you look at the running lines. The first thing I like about the horse is when we go to the true odds. The horse is projected to have a big lead, so you can see he's going to have a 5-length or so lead in the early going and a 3-length lead in the middle of the race. And this is based on just the algorithm that the stats quantitative analysis team came up with. It's tested very well, and I just think even if the horse doesn't get as big a lead as projected here, he's going to be comfortable within himself, and I don't think there's anyone in the race who's going to be able to pressure him early. I mean, there may be horses faster at the end, but in the early going, I do think he's going to have things his way. The last 2 times, for me visually, this horse, the race. Let me go back to the PPs. This race that let me jump to. This race that he ran down the hill, I mean, he was so much the best. I know it wasn't, the strongest race in the world, but I mean, the horse actually got wet. I mean, it was a hot, humid day in Southern California, and I mean, he just kind of jogged to win the race, it looked like. And then the last race, I think he was kind of keyed up, because a lot of times when horses, go down the hill, it sharpens their speed. So he wasn't rank, I wouldn't say, but he was motoring really good. I mean, the horse, when you watch him, he looks like he's got a big engine, and he was motoring along. I mean, it looked like he kind of got a little bit tired towards the end, but I know the comments after the race that Oreo said he had plenty of horse and galloped out strong past the wire. So, I mean, I take him at his word. So I like that about him. I also like that Flavian Pratt's getting on him. I think he's good at relaxing a horse in a turf race on the lead, and so I think this horse still wants to get the hang of things. So I just think there's a big upside for improvement. Um, I don't know. What did you think of this horse?
There's so many horses, Craig, in this group that I've tracked and that I like. And of course, Oscar Performance, frankly, a horse that I included in my Eclipse voting, and gave him a juvenile nod as the 2-year-old. I gave him just a tip of the cap and voted him third behind the two obvious players. And the opportunity in here and the discussion point has got to central around La Coronel, the filly that's going to try to take on the boys. She'll scratch out of the Edgewood tomorrow, and she'll run Saturday in this American turf as she prepares to go to Royal Ascot. And between La Coronel, who can really kind of carve out her own trip, and I think Giroux, you talk about Pratt getting a horse to relax, and Giroux has been very good with La Coronel. It did take her a start earlier in the season to kind of gather herself. She absolutely demolished that Appalachian field at Keeneland 3 weeks ago, and anything back to that race, I think she's very imposing in here. You talk about a West Coast horse, and it's funny, I talked to Mike Mikowski earlier today. He's in town to participate in that turf sprint tomorrow. But big score. Tim Yakteen shows up, and he wins the Transylvania and does it stylishly. A horse that was very competitive last year at 2 against the best West Coast horses. And I thought that the race even that he ran in the Breeders' Cup was outstanding. And he starts his 3-year-old year off with a win, basically, with disdain for the East Coast and the fairgrounds and the Florida horses at Keeneland. Anything back to that race that he ran is credible. Kitten's Cat is a horse that was key last year for me in the Breeders' Cup on the undercard, that race that he ran down the hill. I think he's a cut below the best in here, but Kitten's Cat is a horse that at the very least can prompt the pace and could have a say late. Holiday Stone from George Weaver, who was on the lead, didn't expect or didn't necessarily rate to be on the lead. I think he's more versatile than people might think at first blush. So there is all kinds of interesting things happening in here. You also have Made You Look, the Pletcher runner for Let's Go Stable. And if you were here watching workouts, this is the horse that basically pushed Battalion Runner right out of the Derby. A turf horse working on the dirt, and he drilled the runner-up in the Wood Memorial. So Made You Look after getting a dirt try in the Fountain of Youth and failing that audition, he gets back on the grass, and if he picks up where he left off. So I think that this is really competitive. I think we got an honest pace, Craig, to deal with, and I have no knocks on Conquest Fahrenheit at all, but he is going to have to be, this good, and he's also stretching out an additional 16th of a mile.
Right. No, I understand. I mean, the main thing is I'm biased just because, and you never know. It's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it works out for you, and sometimes it doesn't. I just think, for me, just visually, he's been really impressive, and I've seen some of the other races, and just no one has struck my eye the way that this horse has, and so that's why it's is why I'm going to play him so strongly. One of his angles I wanted to point out for Conquest Fahrenheit. I just want to show this angle because it's something that people may not know about. We added it to Race Lens maybe 3 months ago, and that's based on sometimes people for fitness, they want to look at furlongs per day, basically. So basically what you're doing is when you're looking at when you look at the workouts for a horse, if you're going to go back like 30 days from today's date, you look at all the workouts that fit in that time period, and then you add up the furlongs and divide it by the divided by the number of days, and so it's a good way to try to based on different class levels. I've experimented with some, and some things I've come up with have turned out to be positive. A lot of times there's not a lot of examples, but you can come with good angles. So this one here is, I had graded stakes, and it's for furlongs per day is at least 90%. So when I click on this angle, which he fits right now, you'll see that there's not a lot of, over the last year it only came up 76 times. So it's not, it doesn't happen a lot, but it does have a 25% win percent and a positive 18% ROI. So this is just when you get back to talking about how the horse is, going further than he has before and things like that. This kind of, helps make me still stay positive because, the horse is definitely fit when he has this, working so many furlongs all the time. So that was one thing I wanted to point out. And then there was Big Score I liked a lot to throw in the exotics with this horse. And then the other horse that I still was going to throw in as kind of a board horse, like in the trifecta, was the 6 horse. And it was mainly just because of the way he broke his maiden. I mean, this is a horse who even while he was a maiden, they did think enough of him to try him in 2 graded stakes. So the trainer Brad Cox and the ownership definitely had to see something there, and he's a good trainer. So the horse finally broke his maiden last time, and he did it in his equine speed figure of 105 is the same as the class rating of today's race. So that just tells you that the competition is harder, but he may be good enough to get a piece of it as well. So that was just a horse that I was going to throw in as a price in exactas with Conquest Fahrenheit.
A terrific edition of the American turf, and right now, I mean, the way I looked at it, and I only got to the Saturday card this afternoon after we finished with radio, but Big Score for me right now. Big Score drawing inside the way he did, and the way Castellano rode him so confidently last time. If you watch the replay, he's down inside, and Castellano had to wait for a seam to open. And when he did, Big Score in about 2 jumps had corralled the leaders and gone on by to win. In fact, I remember sending out a tweet that you couldn't ride a horse more confidently. If he runs back to that race, Big Score is to me is very tough in this spot. And you're looking at 6-1 on the morning line, and I think we may get every bit of that because of the money that horses like Oscar Performance are going to get in this town. All the Kittens horses are going to get played. La Coronel is going to take plenty of money as well. So I think you might end up getting some real value on Big Score, and you're around the same price, Craig, on Fahrenheit.
Right, and and I just wanted to go to the true odds page here because you do see, like you said, Oscar Performs on the morning line odds of 7-2, and then you have, 5 horses, 3 at 5-1, 2 at. I mean, you don't see this very often, and another horse at 8-1 who you think is going to get bet down, the filly. So I mean, it's almost impossible for a horse you like not to be a price here. I mean, it's just it has to happen. You're gonna get what you want. I mean, basically on the odds, because whatever opinion you have, you're gonna be able to back it, and that's why. I mean, for me, like I said, this was gonna be my horse for this whole weekend. It was gonna be Conquest Fahrenheit to build things around him. But I can totally see Big Score, and he was one of the other ones I liked. So.
You're married to this guy. There's no doubt.
Exactly. Yeah. No, exactly. So that's what I mean. It's gonna be good or bad. We'll see. So it's on with that. Any update on Laffit yet, or no?
Well, I'd love to say that he'll be here momentarily because they just finished the feature, the Kentucky Juvenile. And if you weren't watching on another screen or on your phone, an absolute thriller with the daughter of violence beating the boys. There is an inquiry, and there's no objection, but there is an inquiry, and she did tighten things up. She did tighten things up undoubtedly on the runner-up, and we'll see. But I'd be a little surprised if there's any change. And this really would be a pretty wonderful start to Violence's stud career. One starter, one winner, then a second start, and a stake win for Violence in just the first opportunity and only the second start. They're taking her picture, and so it looks like this is going to be okay, and we'll get Laffit at that point. Craig, you know what we could do? Instead of going into the Oaks, we'll save the Oaks conversation. Talk about your budget for this weekend. This is something that, certainly some players, if you're a fairly neophyte player, a moderate experience, laying out a budget and making sure that you've got money in your account by the time the Derby rolls around. You don't want to get, after all the work that's gone in, you don't want to get to Saturday at 6 o'clock and realize you're undercapitalized for one of the best betting opportunities of the year. Talk about how you budget and how you attack these two cards.
Yeah, so for me, this isn't. I'm a little different. That I don't go crazy. Like the 2 days I go crazy for are Breeders' Cup, and so Kentucky Derby is just okay for me. But I do have my friends who it's today they want to bet the most because they think there's so much dead money or new money out there, or people betting on names more than any other racing day, and they say that the payoffs always pay more than expected throughout the whole all day Saturday from beginning to end, and just I just haven't got on that bandwagon basically, but I do know that they my friends who are really good and who do well at the races, just make sure that they have, like you're saying, make sure that they have a big chunk of their money to put on the horses that they really like. So, like for me, it would be this Conquest Fahrenheit. And no matter what, wouldn't waste a lot of money on anything before that. That one I'm going to make sure that, maybe it's going to be 50% of the money I have for the 2 days is going to go somewhere, either pick threes or pick fives or pick fours tied to that horse, and then I still always am going to bet something in the race itself. So it's not always to win, but with the odds that this horse is going to get, I'll put win money on it. If it's a horse whose odds are more in the 7-2 or lower range, or especially if the horses are even money or something, then I'm going to try to hit exactas or the spread in the superfectas, or key the horse on top of 2 or 3 horses and trifectas, something like that. Because I don't want to. It's the one thing that I've learned over the years. I do like the pick fours and pick fives a lot, and that's where I key my money. But I'm always going to try to at least do something within a race. I always put something tied to the horse, because if I'm totally right, I want to get paid something. I don't want to pick a 5-1 that I love, and then miss one other leg in the pick four, and I get 0. And I just have learned over the years to do that. So that's the way my mind works as far as budgeting and trying to make a score in the races where that there's a chance to do something with the horse that you like a lot.
Well, very happy that we get this opportunity to add the star of the show. Laffit Pincay III joins us after the longest prequel to Oaks and Derby in history.
Unbelievable. Best laid plans, right? We were hoping to get here around 6:10 or so, and first we had the delay. and essentially the power going down and the malfunction that took place. So that backed up the show about 30 minutes or so, and we decided to stay on the air to cover the last race, and then figured we'd watch the race and duck in and join everybody. And there was a spill in the last race. And fortunately, Baytown Lex is not seriously injured. Carson Sullivan did go down. That was the 2-year-old race that was just completed at Churchill Downs. I spoke with Dr. Keith Laston, said it wasn't life-threatening. It was just a laceration over his right knee. But the point was, it delayed us even further. So apologies for being here so late.
Well, we spent a nice half hour plus. We talked about the Pate Mile.
You saved the Derby for me, right? You haven't touched on the Derby.
Oh no, we're done with the Derby. We need that. We need that allowance. We need that fifth race allowance on Saturday. No, we're going to talk the Oaks and then the Derby, and we talked about the Pate Mile, which I find very difficult. 13 horses coming from all different angles, and a lot of them cutting back to one turn. And then we just talked about this American Turf, which you've got to love because you got Yakteen, you've got who else? I mean, all the Californians showed
strong California contender,
big time. Peter Miller with Fahrenheit that Craig loved.
It's so challenging from top to bottom, and the American Turf, and I'm sure that it's been discussed for Mark Casse and La Coronel. Her last win at Keeneland in the Appalachian, just absolutely mind-boggling how good she was, and it could be a monster weekend for the Casse family, obviously Classic Empire, and this could be a prep for Alaska, and something that Wesley Ward has done, sort of blazing that trail, and a pioneer, and Casse having gone back there and already won with Tepin. La Coronel taking on the boys. This is going to get her ready for the biggest test of her life. She's already running a Breeders' Cup race, but very good chance we could see her in the UK running on one of the world's most prestigious stages.
Well, there's so much of that. We just saw the 2-year-old filly become Violence's first stake winner, already his first winner. So he's 2 for 2 with her as a stallion. The Robesons and Florent Giroux, who feels like he has woken up after a slumber, an absolute somnambulist at Keeneland. You can use that, by the way.
It'll make the air. In the 22 hours that we're going to be on this week, that will make the air. He's excited. He's so fired up about Henson. You can tell with a jockey, it's just all upstairs. It's all confidence. And I know that I've talked to my father about this. There were times where he'd get in the saddle of a 2-5 shot that couldn't lose on paper, and he just felt like a lead balloon in that saddle, that no matter what he did, it was going to be the wrong call, and he wouldn't win that particular race. On other times, horses that made no sense on paper, everything he jumped in the saddle of, he thought he could improve their form. And that's what it feels like, that cycle that Florent Giroux starting to turn the corner a little bit, teaming up with La Coronel, and oh, by the way, the horse also running in there that kicked Battalion Runner to the curb and made you look. This is like that crazy, legendary, I don't even know if I buy the story, Tepin work with Danzig Moon before the Kentucky Derby.
You can buy the story, because I was standing up there with John and with Gary Young, and the whole it was
beat him like a drum. Beat him like a drum. It made you look, and maybe that's the horse we're talking about. We're so much focus, and on the Derby horse is working, but look on dirt, this turf horse boots Battalion Runner out of the Derby, and I've always thought highly of Made You Look, and been disappointed he hasn't been more effective during the course of the early stages of his career.
And what's funny about Made You Look and about that circumstance, Todd Pletcher earlier in the winter, when he and I discussed things about him after the Dania Beach win, Todd said, we do want to give him a look on the dirt because he works so well on dirt. But you know what? There's a lesson in that for horse players, because you hear trainers speak all the time, oh, we're going to try him on the dirt. He looks so good on the dirt. Looking good on the dirt in the morning, and then running on it in the afternoon against
taking dirt.
All that aspect absolutely is a big difference. And he goes back to the grass, and I agree. I thought this was Craig is hanging his whole weekend on P.D. Miller and Conquest Fahrenheit.
Come and catch him if you can. He's quick.
P.D. or Conquest Fahrenheit?
Conquest Fahrenheit.
P.D.'s pretty quick, too.
Both of them.
He's down there in San Luis Ray Downs. We can't even see the workout. It's unbelievable what's going on. Oh, boy, we're in trouble. For those of you that thought this would be over at 7, you have no hope.
We ain't going anywhere. I just got here.
Craig, why don't you turn the control on the board over to the Oaks, and we'll start to dive in to the Oaks.
Yeah, we're there. So Laffit can just direct me to whatever horses he wants to talk about.
You remember your notes?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm on information overload now. I just like to take a look at these deals. I know that the filly whose name escapes me, who I think is going to win the Kentucky Oaks, drawn inside, coming from off the pace. That's what I'd like to talk about.
Ever so clever.
Ever so clever. Here's the thing. Richard Mandela's filly, Paradise Woods, and it's such an amazing story that I'm sure it's been well documented and discussed. And Herman Sarkowski and the recent passing and leaving this filly in a will and the idea that it was a mandate that Richard Mandela had to train her and the relationships that are being mended in the process. You can't watch that Santa Anita Oaks and find any flaw. She ran a hole in the wind. But there is there's handicapping theories out there that suggest that she's supposed to take a step back because she ran so fast so early on in her career. And if that's the case, if you buy into any of that, you can search for a price. You can search for some value out there. And for me, it's ever so clever based on the work that she's done here at Churchill Downs. 7-length maiden win. She has done some of her very best running here. And coming from off the pace, I think that with enough pace in here, and you're going to have a lively pace in the Kentucky Oaks, look out for Ever So Clever doing some serious damage with Luis Contreras.
It's that simple.
Flatline. Flatline.
In terms, one of the things that, and Craig pointed this out when we started the conversation, and he used no dozing, and you see the performance in the fantasy, which really stands out. And that's actually surprising that she has, Craig, the last, that her performance in the fantasy is the standout effort.
Right. Yeah. That's the best that she's done, and you can see her equibase speed figures are on the improve, and it's the kind of the more gradual way that you like to see it. Like what Laffit talked about, instead of the big race where you can bounce off of, this horse is progressing nicely.
She is, and there's the pedigree angle, Craig, and I'm a sucker for Medaglia d'Oro. It's watching him progress. He was one of those crafty Ed Gann purchases back in 2002 where everything he and Bobby Frankel teamed up and bought, it turned to gold. And the farther he went, the better off he was. He was a troubled fourth in the Derby. He ran poorly in the Preakness, but some of his best efforts at longer distances. He was second in the Belmont Stakes. And the idea that he is a sire of Ever So Clever, and here she is running a 1.8 miles, the farther the better. And I'm a big believer in class in terms of pedigree with Medaglia d'Oro. Distance and class is what you get with this particular sire.
One of the things that really, and you mentioned the success that she's had here, we carry on about the Derby horses, and of course McCracken 3 for 3 here, Classic Empire 2 for 2 here, and Ever So Clever has yet to be off the board in her 3 tries locally, and it counts for a lot. And that also includes, even though when you're looking at all weekend, not just in the stakes, but when you're looking at the maiden races and the allowances, be aware this racetrack, we don't know how much water we're going to have. And we could actually take a second and maybe all three of us can talk about our approaches. But I can tell you from coming here for close to 20 years, for starters, all day long today, we never really got any heavy rain.
No.
We got spats of rain, and it'll be maybe a little bit heavier overnight and into tomorrow. But the main track here, you don't have to worry about. The footing is always good, and it ends up dried. If there's any wind, you'll be shocked at what good shape this is in.
You're guessing. You don't know where exactly. This is one of the most, as far as trying to project weather, it's so incredibly difficult in this particular part of the country. Yeah, it might rain. You don't know exactly where it's going to rain. You don't know exactly how much it's going to rain. And as Steve mentioned, the track drains so incredibly fast. The drainage system, incredible. They've done a great job with it in that sense. We had Donna Brothers on the pony today, and we were talking to her right before the last race about what kind of shape the track was in. She says it feels great. She thought it would be muddy. She thought it would be a little bit sticky because it had been off and on raining all afternoon. She says the track was in great shape. The monsoon that blew through last year on Kentucky Derby Saturday, and by the time you got to post time, it was a fast track. So difficult to project what the weather's going to be like, how much rain is going to be on the track, and what kind of effect it'll actually have, and what it takes to actually have a sloppy track, how much rain precisely leading up to the Derby or the Oaks.
And you need basically the thunderstorm that comes while they're running the Woodford Reserve to guarantee a sloppy track like you had for Orr.
The Smarty Jones.
And the Smarty Jones, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So from that standpoint, when you see virtually any horse that's based here that shows, even if he or she has not won on a wet surface, on whether it's a sloppy or a muddy surface at Churchill, I guarantee you they've worked over this track with moisture in it the way Sonneteer worked on Sunday. We'll get to Sonneteer in a little bit, the Calumet Maiden in the Derby. But my point is, horses that have shown an affinity for this surface, they are absolutely get a bonus from you when you're handicapped, when you're building tickets.
And hypothetically, if it does rain and you do have a sloppy surface for the Oaks, Medaglia d'Oro was an absolute freak on a wet track. His Travers in a downpour was brilliant. He was by El Prado. So regardless of track surface, what you do know is that Ever So Clever likes it here at Churchill Downs. And if for whatever reason she regresses, if she reacts, whatever the case is with Paradise Woods, if she doesn't bring her A game and she steps back from a nuclear performance in the Santa Anita Oaks, with that pace, don't dismiss Ever So Clever.
Who else?
Abel Tasman.
Didn't draw well.
That's a problem. That's the problem. But it is, I find, when you're looking at the human element, when it's a Bob Baffert and it's a Mike Smith, and this is nothing we all don't already know, and it's Captain Obvious, but when these guys team up and win a big race, a celebrated, prestigious horse race where the big money's on the line, and you don't use them, you're so frustrated with yourself. It's like betting against Michael Jordan in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. These guys come through. They've made some adjustments, I think, since their last start. Abel Tasman got run off the track by Paradise Woods. I know how much Bob Baffert thinks of this filly. And Baffert on the road. Yeah, he does his thing in California. On the road, he is every bit as effective. Again, nothing we don't already know, but sometimes you don't have to make it any more complicated than it is. You go with the obvious here. And if she's 5-1 and people are a little down on her based on her effort in the Santa Anita Oaks, don't let her get away at too big of a price. I think she does bounce back. Steve's right. That post is a bit of a concern. The 13 going a mile and an eighth at Churchill is a lot worse than the 19 going a mile and a quarter in the Derby.
Gary Young today. We were laughing, and Gary made.
You got Gary to laugh?
Gary actually, he's got a good sense of humor. I didn't realize.
Hysterical.
No, he's the greatest.
He missed his calling. Like he should be like on stage.
Oh no, he found his calling. He found there's no other industry or life for him.
Have you actually sat in the box and watched him clock?
Oh, of course, upstairs. Upstairs.
It's
flying a Dalmatian.
There's a little Dustin Hoffman Rain Man counting cards there, and like Keanu Reeves looking through the Matrix. He doesn't see what we see. He looks right through the Matrix. It's brilliant. Sorry to go up on a tangent.
He's the greatest. Give us, Craig, your take. Because you actually overlap with some interest in Abel Tasman, but the favorite, who I got to tell you, I could put a picture up on Twitter right now. I was with Richard Mandela while they were schooling during the wacky delay, and Paradise Woods,
Richard was thrilled about that. By the way.
He had Bally with him as well, but eventually he just said, "We're going home," and he took her home. She is a very masculine looking filly. He's got a big, almost a male head, and she has grown considerably since I saw her when I was in for San Felipe Day. She has really grown.
If horses are going to regress, normally they'll give you some sort of indication, whether it's in a work, it's something physical, they've dropped weight, there's something. This filly physically, her presence, scary, forward. The only reason you would try to beat her is specifically on theory and on that particular logic that this horse has to take a step back because she ran so fast early on in her career. It wouldn't be anything from what you've seen from her with your own two eyeballs in terms of how she's looked specifically here at Churchill.
Greg, how did talk about that exactly you put together?
Yeah, no. So I like the same horse as Laffit did, basically. The one thing I want to point out on Abel Tasman is that the going into that race, she was the one who was heavily favored. So you see that she was odds on, and so like Laffit said, you're hoping that Paradise Woods can regress if you're going to play Abel Tasman. But I mean, going into the race, she was the one who had the better reputation, and so it takes more than one race for I think for it to be determined that one horse is better than another. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the race. And then just one other thing I wanted to point out on Paradise Woods is there is an angle I have that's not a moneymaker, but it's a good angle that you can single horses on a lot of times when you're playing the pick fours, pick fives, things like that. So it's when in Racelands when the projected leader exits a very fast last race. So when I click on that angle, I think this, of all the angles that I've had in Raceland so far, this is by far the one with the highest win percentage with a huge amount of starts. So you can see that there's been 500 starts where this angle is matched, and 50% of the time the horses won the race. And the ROI is -5%, but still it's pretty amazing that you just going off basically it's that the horse is projected on the lead, and then that his Equibase speed figure of his last race is 10 points or more faster than what the winner's expected to run today, the class rating. So that's an easy one. I just want to point that out for people to add that to their angles, because it's easy to put together, and you can send us an email if you have any questions, but it's pretty straightforward if you just look at that criteria to put that. So it's more not for this instance, but just for future reference. It's a nice one to add to your angles.
23 years ago, 94, the two big fillies that came out for the Oaks from California, Lakeway, Sardula. Lakeway was the big favorite. It was poured and poured and poured. That year we did have a sloppy track, and the filly who was thought to be the lesser of the two California invaders, Sardula, turned the table, took down the Oaks.
Well, this as a group, when you look at this Oaks, the key I think ends up being the pace, and the real sneaky horse in here, and I did not expect to even look at her for 3 minutes, is going to be Feral, and the reason is nothing I could find in Racelands is gonna help me with this, but I will say that her rating, the way she did in the Fairgrounds Oaks, that was a revelation. She had given a hint at it in the Silver Bullet Day where she handled the wet track. But the thing that really resonated was how she sat so comfortably in the Oaks. If she can do that and finish, she is going to be the one horse that, I suppose, along with Miss Sky Warrior, who's a bit of a mystery because she has faced absolutely nothing of real definable quality. So Feral's the horse that I think you have to give a second look, and she may actually get a little shuffled in the wagering, and you might get a little better price than you might have expected. And I can tell you, Wayne Catalano is sky high. I mean, just and really, his brother died earlier this week, and there's a whole story there, of course. But Catalano just does not think he can lose with Feral tomorrow. So she's the interesting other horse in here that you may gloss over.
If you believe and as strong as a favorite as Paradise Woods is going to be, and she's going to be overbet everybody else, that price is going to inflate a tick or two. And, yeah, I don't think we can calculate trainers' moods and confidence in stats race lens. That's the only thing you can't calculate, the only aspect it's missing. If you could, he's one of these guys that is an easy read.
Yeah.
It's also typically that I have found an accurate read. Is Farrell good enough to beat Paradise Woods? I don't know. I think Farrell, though, is sitting on the best race we've seen today. And that's saying something because she's been very good. And for whatever reasons, this particular circuit, the fairground circuit producing 3-year-old fillies in terms of production on the Kentucky, it's just been much more productive with the girls than it has the boys over the years.
Very true. Very true.
Right, and then just the one other thing. The one other thing is that we do know that if you do get the wet track, that Farrell does like it's like the wet fast track and a muddy track. So that's that'll be a plus for sure if you get the moisture in there.
Well, we're going to turn our attention and spend probably the next half hour and want everybody to stay with us. So it's a bonus coverage.
We ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, and let's turn our attention to the Derby. And in terms of an introduction, Laffit, before we start pulling out stats and, of course, a 20-horse field and a uncertain pace picture and all kinds of elements for us to dig into, your overall impression as we start to zero in. Wagering will open tomorrow, advanced wagering. We'll get some reads on an unpredictable, frankly, odds board, I think, is as intriguing as anything. But coming into Derby, your overall thoughts approaching the race.
It's, every time we get here, but it just reminds you of why we fell in love with this sport to begin with. It's so special. And now it feels like Kentucky Derby week is being stretched out. It's almost like a Mardi Gras now, starting with Derby today and Oaks tomorrow, Derby Saturday. But following these 3-year-olds, and we've learned in recent history that all those rules that can't be overcome for horses trying to win the Derby, so few of them exist, whether it's a New York bred gelding winning, or whether it's a horse bred to go a mile winning in Smarty Jones, or Barbaro overcoming the 5-week window, Street Sense the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, Barbaro only 4 careers. So all these obstacles, every rule broken year after year after year. It's a different year. We don't talk about back class as much. We don't talk about foundation. Recently, it's just been a chalk fest. It's been 4 consecutive favorites in the Derby. 8 of the last 17 favorites have won the Derby. But what's made it more difficult this year is that you don't have the consistency that you had in previous years. I'll have another Orb, California Chrome, American Pharoah, Nyquist never lost his 3-year-old. Never lost his 3-year-olds. You have to go back to March of 2011 to find the last eventual Derby winner to lose a race at 3, and that was Animal Kingdom on grass or synthetic or whatever it was. So with those horses, you can lean on that consistency. You don't have that this year, which has made it so difficult. And I think I shudder to suggest that we have another wide open Derby, because every year that we've been saying it's a wide open Derby, it's another favorite. Steve, I think we have a wide open Derby.
It's funny. I've had this conversation now as we arc toward tomorrow, our last opportunity to handicap, and we'll have a parade of people on the radio with us here tomorrow.
The parade tonight. Don't get caught in that traffic.
Well, I forgot about that.
Keep it in mind.
I'm glad you did say that, although I had the other opposite direction, so I should be all right.
You'll be fine.
I've taken a slightly different view, and last year I was hopeful that it was going to be a wide open betting affair, and
the betting for chaos, as you say.
I did. That's exactly how I wrote it, and in the wagering guide. And looking at this, the more I dove into the stats and dove into the past performances and watched the replays, for me, it became more apparent that the obvious top candidates, what we would call the most likely winner candidates, are simply better than those that have yet to reach a level of performance that you can basically rely on. And yes, everybody, including Classic Empire, McCracken, and Irish Warcry, yes, all 3 have had one form or another of a misstep or mistime or a little physical issue or whatever you want to identify. And yes, Always Dreaming is inexperienced and has had a high energy week here at Churchill that makes you uncertain of whether he's just going to be a runoff. But if any of those four, and that's 20% of the field, if any of those four top choices run their A race, they're better than the other 16, unless you get a jump-up performance from somebody. Those four horses are just, to me, infinitely more likely than the rest of them combined. And I want to key off of those. McCracken is going to be my pick, and it's hard to argue with a horse that's 3 for 3 at this racetrack, and is in the hands of a guy who is the inheritor of the John Nehru legacy from Karl Nafzger, and Nafzger got it from Nehru. You need further introduction to what Street Sense did, the first horse to win the juvenile and then come back and win the Derby. I don't know how many people are old enough to have remembered Unbridled. Ian Wilkes was his exercise rider. There is so much going on here, and then watching McCracken train here. Craig, you talked about 4 furlong workouts. McCracken is putting in 3 4 furlong workouts every 6 days.
They couldn't get him pulled up, right?
No.
It's like he rebroke and they had to get the out. Let me play devil's advocate regarding McCracken just for a moment and ask you a couple of questions, Steve. What would you say to his critics? I'm not saying I am one of them. What would you say to someone who would suggest, who is he beaten? Has he run fast enough?
The fast enough element, and you're looking at whether you're looking at buyers, and I've got thoroughgraphs here to deal with as well. Yes, it's going to take a forward move. He's going to have to run his best race. However, he seems primed to run his best race.
He does, and that's like I said, the idea that someone really is that good still at using a prep as a prep. Ian Wilkes lost zero confidence, none, off of that third place finish with McCracken in the Bluegrass. I think when he was originally being asked about it, there was almost a hesitancy. You're just talking to a trainer who has a potential Derby favorite who didn't run well in his final prep. He says, I don't even think that was a step back. I got exactly what I needed. The Bluegrass is a prestigious horse race. It should still be a grade 1. Is it 750,000 seats? I think so. But all those things, it's a prep race. And there isn't a breeder, owner, trainer, jockey in the country who wouldn't trade 10 Bluegrasses for 1 Kentucky Derby. And Ian Wilkes falls into that camp, still knowing how to use a prep as a prep.
Drew very well as well. Draws the 50.
He was nervous because the 1 was still available, and there were about 7 slots available, and they hadn't called McCracken's name yet. He told me before the draw, anything but the 1, which is what you hear from a lot of trainers, but anything but the 1. He was getting nervous, so he was very pleased with the 15 post.
Should absolutely give Brian Hernandez Jr. an opportunity to find a spot, probably somewhere between 8th and 13th in that middle portion. If there's an opportunity to draft in and save ground, get down to the 2-path or even the rail, I wouldn't be surprised to see that. There's everything to like about the way he comes into this, and this is a field that, even if you want to talk number power, it's a field that is only separated by about 3 to 5 lengths. So I'm not going to worry about him needing to pick up 2, 3, 4 lengths. If there's somebody that is going to be jumping up to surpass him, again, I think you're looking at one of the other 3 logical players.
At some point, you can't use everyone. And when it comes to the Derby, very often you're going to leave horses off your tickets that you respect, that you fear, that you like, but you can't use everyone. So what I did this year, and while I have all the respect for the world in McCracken and an easy guy to pull for Ian Wilkes, in the end of the day, we're also just still fans, and you want to be happy with the result. And Wilkes is this would be a great story if McCracken did win. That aside, where I drew the line this year was any horse. I wasn't going to use anyone who had, and you mentioned some of these setbacks or inexcusable poor performances. I did give Irish War Cry, and I am giving Irish War Cry a mulligan. But Classic Empire, McCracken, so many setbacks that they each had to overcome. For Classic Empire, much more so than McCracken, it was just the ankle and the one missed prep race. But if you can't use everyone and you're looking for a reason as to why to exclude someone, that was good enough for me regarding McCracken. If he goes out and kicks their fill in the blanks, though, I wouldn't be surprised in the least.
Talk about the horses that you mined information out of Stats Raceland.
Craig, in terms of the consistency we discussed with Always Dreaming, and I already mentioned those recent 3-year-olds, that the pattern has been you need to win your prep races in recent history. And no, what happened last year doesn't have anything to do with what's going to happen this year. But that is a trend. At some point, that will change, and at some point, that could lead you astray. But the idea that he has won all 3 of his races this year, and that Florida Derby win, to me, was just off the charts good. And the combination of his God-given ability, his tactical speed, and I do feel that there is a Derby out there with Todd Fletcher and John Velasquez's name on it. That's not anything you're going to find in Raceland. That's more of one of Steve Haskins', Derby gods type of thing. But for that, those guys, they've had so much success together over the years. They've each won in Derby, but they haven't won one together. If I'm going to separate horses and not use certain horses because they've had setbacks or poor performances on big stages en route to the Kentucky Derby, then the antithesis of that is a horse that hasn't had the misstep. Though he's been a handful, I understand, this week here at Churchill Downs, but I went with what I felt was the hot hand in Always Dreaming and his consistency, the fact that he is still unblemished, undefeated this year.
Who else do you want to involve?
Irish War Cry, that was the change. We came out with the Express Bets wagering guide last week, and originally I had Always Dreaming, Gunnevera, Practical Joke, and Looking at Lee. I moved Irish War Cry all the way up to number 2. And the reason is that if you were going to critique the Wood Memorial, it's because he had too easy of a trip out in the clear, no dirt in his face. He's going to have the same trip. I thought the 17, and I realized no horse has ever won the Derby from the 17. I could care less. His tactical speed, with the speed other horses, and I'm not expecting a nuclear pace, but an honest pace. I'm thinking somewhere 46 and 4, 47 flat to the half. Irish War Cry sitting just off of those leaders. And from what we saw in the Holy Bull, his Wood Memorial, it speaks for itself. This was the one time, Steve, that, and I know it's the most detested excuse in horse racing, the racehorse didn't like the racetrack. I bought it, and I thought he hated the racetrack in the Fountain of Youth. The conditions, that track, when it gets that windy, you can't keep any water on the track. It's like a plowed field. It's like a plowed field. And Graham Motion was hesitant to run him in that race to begin with because he ran so big in the Holy Bull that he might regress. This was one of those cases where I bought what Graham Motion was selling, and I bought the excuse and didn't feel like that was I thought it was an understandable poor performance as opposed to some of the other horses this year that were inconsistent inexplicably. I thought you could excuse that effort.
What was interesting, going into that race, there was a school of thought that said that the Holy Bull win came basically with a garden trip and with an easy lead, and that he got to basically cut out fractions at his leisure, and that it was too slow and given that Gunnevera had some issues earlier and had some traffic and didn't get uncorked till late, there was a kind of an opinion out there that he was either faint of heart and that kind of thing. And so the people that were anti-Irish War Cry going to New York, they basically got burnt, because here he was very much even a different horse, because he had a different trip this time and an outside stalking voyage. And if any one horse drew perfectly in this Derby yesterday, it was Irish War Cry.
He was the winner at the draw, in my opinion.
No doubt. The 17 and what's interesting is you think, oh, well, a Practical Joke, what's wrong with the 19? There's a huge difference between Practical Joke from the 19 and Irish War Cry from the 17, where Rajiv Marat basically has 1,200 feet before, or even a little bit more actually, before the turn, to find a slot and to basically maybe get to the 3 or 4 path.
Yep.
And frankly, even if he does, I said this yesterday, even if he does lose some ground after the draw, I said even if he does lose some ground in that first turn, he'll be in a position on the backstretch that when they turn for home, he'll basically be hard spun at that point, and he'll be the horse to catch. remember in the Derby, the horses that are within 2 lengths of the lead at the 8th pole, typically 3 out of those 4 horses will be in your superfecta. So horses, look at try to figure out. John White talks about this all the time. Horses that are going to be basically on the lead or within striking distance at the 8th pole. That's what you're looking at. And Irish Warcry figures to be one of those horses. And the big question here continues to be Always Dreaming, because if he gets away with any kind of opportunity to relax, he will turn into War Emblem. And all you have to do is go to ExpressBet TV and watch, or actually to KentuckyDerby.com and watch the workout from the other morning, from last week that was Friday,
yep,
of Always Dreaming, because he was headstrong early and then Johnny got him to relax. And if he relaxes up on that lead, and as Todd Pletcher said, we may see something really special. And that's one of the real cruxes of this, of deciding how this race unfolds. Because if he is tackled early and we get the 4 horses that are down inside that figure to want to be forwardly placed, well, then we might get a pace battle and a meltdown scenario. The beauty of some of the other horses to consider in here, like McCracken, they can adjust. McCracken can sit mid-pack and let it unfold in front of him.
Classic Empire. He's adaptable in terms of style. Irish Warcry, the trip horse. And Always Dreaming, this is, I think, an underappreciated part of John Velasquez's game. He is a master at getting horses to relax that might be a little bit more unruly for someone else. He is the perfect fit. What happens when they take the draw reins off? And it's really, I think if you are going to stick with Always Dreaming, which I am, this is who I have on top, as I mentioned, and I tweeted something about this the other night, that it's difficult to block out the noise. When so many respected handicappers and pundits and scribes in horse racing are all asking the same questions and really concerned about, man, is Always Dreaming a handful in the morning, and how much energy is he expending, and how much energy is he going to expend on the walkover if he's this much on the muscle, in the paddock, during the course of the race. And this is uncharacteristic. We've never seen this from Always Dreaming. If you're going to stick with him, that price is going to inflate. I think he winds up, Steve, around the 4th choice, as opposed to, he was the second coach favorite on the morning line. That you still have a lot of people out there that are going to blindly dismiss Todd Pletcher. Those stats are completely misleading and overblown. And 1 for 45 is never going to sound good, but a lot of people don't realize he's never started a favorite. He started 3 second choices, won 1, another one ran 3rd. He's never started a horse less than 5-1. And if you total all of the horses Todd Pletcher's run in the Kentucky Derby, the average price is like 23-1 or something insane. This is what frustrates me when the critiques of Pletcher come out, is that if you take a coach of a 500 team in any sport, and that coach takes that team deep into a playoff run, this guy's getting awards, right? He's coach of the year. He's maximizing potential. When Todd Pletcher does it, and he maximizes his potential, and takes his horses to the Derby that might not necessarily belong, and then finally they're exposed on this type of stage, he gets crushed, and it's just another loss on the tally. So I do think the Todd Pletcher statistics, and that being a reason to avoid Pletcher horses in the Derby, is just a mistake.
Well, Invisible Ink and Bluegrass Cat were 30 and 30-something to 1 when they were second. So
are we having this conversation if Escondrea stays healthy? It's
and Uncle Mo, Escondrea.
Right. There's been a lot of bad luck and a lot of horses that, look, it's every owner's dream to get to the Derby, and they're putting a horse in a top conditioner's barn and saying, get me to the promised land, so to speak. And it's about being at the Derby. Part about being at the Derby is being there and being and going to the parties and having the box. If you have a horse typically that can qualify for the Derby, and they're going to run. And a lot of those losses on Todd Pletcher's record are through no fault of their own. There were horses he led over. Even when he won the Derby, there were still, 3 other horses he started that day that lost, and that counts against his record as well.
Well, and that's, of course, that's another aspect of this. When they trot out the 45, that means nothing because he hasn't participated in 45 Derbies.
Right, different years. Right.
That's just stupid. And Craig, I want you to talk about the pace and talk about your approach. The horse though that really should be brought up, who a lot of people are going to clean their glasses and look at him again, is Taprit out of here, the other Pletcher in this case. And I can tell you that Taprit's had a very good fortnight here and has gone about his business very professionally, and it feels like he could run an A race. I mean, if you liked him coming out of the Tampa Bay Derby, and you were happy that Pletcher, instead of doing what they did with Destin, instead of skipping another start, going straight to the Derby, a lot of people are under the opinion that, if Destin had an additional prep, he could have won last year. Whatever. That's neither here nor there. The Taprit storyline, I don't know what to do with him personally. I will probably leave him off because I thought frankly he showed a little bit of a faint heart. I'm more moved by that and the way when confronted he backed away from McCracken actually in the Bluegrass. I think in this field there's going to be plenty other horses that could intimidate him, and I got a feeling he's a bit of a maybe a paper tiger.
It's such a knee-jerk sport that we're in, especially when it comes to the 3-year-olds leading up to the Derby. He was like a consensus top 6 off of his Tampa Bay Derby win.
Oh, he was top 3. I
right.
think people anointed him off of that.
And he is. Man, has he been completely ignored. And I've been training very well here at Churchill Downs. He's had an exceptional week, and maybe he falls into the category of another one of those Bluegrass bounce back effort type of horses. I realized he was on synthetic, but Dominican beat Sweet Sense in the Bluegrass. Thunder Gulch ran 4th or whatever it was, came back to win the Derby.
Yeah.
It seems like as a final prep, it's the one you can kind of historically excuse a poor effort and give a horse enough. That form held for the most. When you saw State of Honor go out and run second in the Florida Derby, that Tampa form looked really, really strong. It took a big hit with McCracken and Tapper for Bluegrass Stakes. I would have liked to have seen, he was wide on both turns, was Tapper. It just never looked right. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, but in terms of his week of training, I did reach out. I had a text exchange with Aaron West. All systems go. They're excited. I agree, and I can't make heads or tails of what to expect from Tapper. I can't. I don't know what to expect.
Craig, let's pull up the pace scenario and see what movement we get out of True Odds in terms of the pace being looked at as potentially moderate and the pace as it might unfold if it heats up. And let's see how that changes things.
Sure, I'll bring that up. There was just one thing I want to point out when you're talking about Taprit too, and this is one thing I look for in the Derby is one other thing about Taprit. Like you said, he looked like he got intimidated last time, and it's going to be a big field of 20 horses. When you look at the field sizes that he's ran against, they've been on the small side. A lot of times you're going to get the bigger 12-horse type fields. He's been against 7, 7, 9, and 10, and so that too I think is going to work against them as far as the inexperience of being negotiating a big field. So it kind of falls into the same idea you're talking about. So we'll jump to the True Odds now. So we can see what the commentary is from the True Odds, the pace scenario, and so it does look like there'll be some quick early fractions, so the trailers could get a shot down the stretch. When we're looking at these pace figures for these races, you just always want to compare it like I've talked about in the PPs with the class rating. The class rating is a 108 in this race. So you're going to expect that the early pace and the middle pace is going to be a 108. When it says there's some quick early fractions, and you know that this first call is going to be on the faster side. So you can see that it's projecting a 114. So once you start getting 5, 6, 7, 8 points or more out from the class rating. So, this is more than 6 points faster. Then it does look like the pace can be fast in the early going, and then these figures here are right at what you would expect when you're looking at the 107.94 or 108. So that's kind of what that looks like. On this scenario, it looks like when I look at this, I would think that Irish War Cry is going to get a good trip, because when it's able to project Irish War Cry getting to the rail, that doesn't mean that he necessarily will, but he's kind of in a pocket there by himself, and so usually I like to see that like he's going to be able to it's like what Laffit said, he's going to be able to get the trip he wants. I mean, it almost seems certain for me, just off what we were talking about before, and even here, there's the gap there where he's in the front of this rest of this pack, and so I know the 21 horse is unlikely to the A's are unlikely to get into the race, but that will when the horses are officially out, if so on Friday morning, that will update on the race lens itself, and so the adjustments will be made just so people know about that. And so it's gonna, how the Derby is. It's a crapshoot, going around that first turn.
You look at that, and that's putting that's got Classic Empire, putting Classic Empire on top.
Yes, right. When you go straight off the adjusted true odds, yeah, you can always highlight it there. So that's who it's looking at. So for me, I think that what you said, Steve, is probably right about the horses who can win this race. So the way that I'm going to try to attack this race is try to hit the superfecta, and there's two long shots I like. So I'll key them in like second, third, and fourth, and probably use the four horses you said, and maybe Practical Joke as well. I don't know, or I might put him in the second hole as well. But the two horses that we're going to use as a price, I know you talked, Steve, you were talking about, I think, mentioning as far as working out was the number 12 Sonneteer. So you were saying he worked out Sunday on the good track
with plenty of moisture on that racetrack. And for those that are dismissive of the maiden, this is not a horse to be dismissive of.
This isn't Trojan Nation.
No.
he's
exactly right.
The way he closed, and looking at Lee there's a bandwagon there. There's a following there. I don't know how you can't like Sonneteer if you do like looking at Lee, the way they were both closing with a flurry, and they're going to appreciate every added step from 1 1/8 to 1 1/4. The Sormo brothers, same. They've had these same types of horses. Texas Red, exaggerated. These devastating closers. Obviously, Sonneteer isn't as accomplished, but Keith won the Preakness last year. Kent's won 3 Derbies. I can see the hesitancy and why somebody would be gun shy about using a maiden in a Kentucky Derby, but there's something kind of magical about what's going on with Calumet right now. And Sonneteer getting in, improving the strength of schedules there. He's faced some really, really good horses. All right, so he hasn't broke his maiden yet. We just saw IRAP would break his maiden at Bluegrass. Is it totally impossible for Sonneteer to break his in the Kentucky Derby? No.
I think stylistically, this is a horse that whether you employ the reverse tri-key concept, or you're looking for a make music for me type that's going to clunk up and hit and be fourth at a very big number when it comes to the vertical. You've got I think an opportunity in that regard to play with a horse like this. Looking at Lee is certainly in that camp as well. If there was going to be one horse in this field not compromised by the one hole, it's not ideal, but it doesn't doom him by any stretch. He's fine. So horses like this that are going to make that late run and have to get, you saw what happened looking at Lee in the Arkansas Derby when he was doing that broken field Crazy Legs Hirsch.
Which you need to be able to do here from
agree.
time to time.
Yeah.
Showing that ability to bob and weave in and out of traffic and not lose momentum. That's key. That was showing us another part of his arsenal that I don't know that we'd been exposed to. And it was a waiting game, but looking at Lee all winter. I got a chance to interview Steve today on the show. And it's been a waiting game of all winter, early spring, waiting to get him running at longer distances, 1.1 1/8, and now finally at 1.25 miles.
Any other offbeat horses that you're wondering about, Craig? Maybe Thunder Snow deserves to be discussed just because of the mystery factor.
Yeah, that was the other one. I'm a sucker for these horses that race in Maidan. I play these horses every year. I mean, I haven't been rewarded yet. I mean, except last year, in the Belmont, Lanny, right? I think was the name of.
Yep.
Was the one that I got some money back finally on that. But the one thing that I like about this one has been different than the other Dubai horses. I do like the way that this horse ran that last race that it ran at St. Cloud in France. I mean, that speed rating of 21, that winning by 5 lengths, in a Grade 1 race like that. None of these kind of foreign horses that I can remember have had that type of race. And I do like that it ran, that in the UAE Derby, that was, they had the crazy rain, and that was a muddy track that day. And I do like this horse's run on soft and good turf. So I'm pretty sure the footing, if we do get any of that moisture on the track, that's not going to bother him at all. So he just, and I know that horse he beat, that Epicaris is a quality horse. And I think they just said that horse is going to run in the Belmont, I think I heard. So at 20-1, he's a horse for me to definitely, I think is going to have value to play it in my supers. So that's kind of the way that I am going to do it. I'm going to use Sonneteer and Thunder Snow and just try to put them in with the logical horses and hope one of them runs a nice race and he can run second or third.
Second to Churchill, you're doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, class-wise, he classes up with this field. It's just strictly a question. I think he was compromised by the draw, being down in the 2-hole. Soumillon's got almost no choice but to quarter horse it a little bit with him, and even though that's not European riding style, I think he has to ask him a little early.
If he doesn't, he gets buried. The talent's there. There's still some bad habits mechanically with Thunder Snow. Some switching leads back and forth. There's certain things that you just typically can't get away with in a race like a Derby. You need to see him. They have to run straight. And he's had, even in his 2 impressive wins, the prep for the UAE Derby and the win in the UAE Derby, you saw plenty of that. That's immaturity, a long trip, quarantine. It's a lot to ask. But I think the raw talent, the ability is there.
Want to answer a question as well on the chat, and as we do that, and the question is, what race might be the best either betting opportunity or what is the most contentious race? I mean, obviously, other than the Derby, and maybe that Churchill Downs Handicap is the race. And Craig, as you pull that up, and we'll finish our extended visit tonight from Churchill Downs with that Churchill Downs Handicap, very contentious group of sprinters. But let me mention that those of you that have been use ExpressBet or TVG, Stats Race Lens available on both, and keep an eye out for promotions and some interactive opportunities that are going to be happening at ExpressBet and at TVG. And you should point out as well, up at the top of the message bar, you should be utilizing the community forum that has really been a big hit and a great way for those that are creating their own angles to exchange ideas or get technical support. And of course, Craig and everybody at Equibase and everybody that's been involved with Raceland, so available for your input, as well as for your questions. So take advantage of the little quotation balloon and get involved in the discussion on the forum. And I also want to fold in the offer that we've got going on. And if you're tuning in tonight and you haven't registered and subscribed, you can get a quarter of Raceland's 3 months for just the price of 1 month. Use SRLQ, that's Raceland's quarter, 129A. SRLQ, 129A, and you get 3 months for the price of one, and that'll take you obviously not just through the Triple Crown season, but right to Del Mar and Saratoga, where the angles are really going to start to pay off. You also 20% off on the True Odd card and subscription. Use STO20A for that. And we also want you to be following Stats Racelands as well as Laffit Pincay TV.
This was so much fun. And
you're not done.
No, we're not going anywhere. I told you. I just want to say, just having these conversations, and again, circumstances that could not be. I did arrive late. So again, apologizing again to your everyone who joined us on this webinar. Big numbers, which I'm glad to see. And it's Christmas for horse players, and if you don't get excited about this particular weekend in this industry, you really do need to find something else to do.
Quick question. I see Jim asked about the long shots for the Derby Try, and we talked about Sonneteer, talked about Thunder Snow.
Yep.
Practical Joke, do you believe he can get the distance? Practical Joke is maybe usable.
I think he is.
Somebody else mentioned Battle of Midway, and Battle of Midway is a very interesting player. He's done very well here, and I know that Hollendorfer doesn't want him as close to the lead. He wants him to sit behind the lead, maybe get a kind of a stalker spot, a pace presser spot, 5th, 6th, 7th. Maybe he gets that trip. I know that there's some people that have suddenly taken a bit of a shine to him.
I can't get away from the clock with the Santa Anita Derby. I can't get away. You look at that final time of 1:51, and lowest Santa Anita Derby since 57. Go ahead.
I will say one thing about that Santa Anita Derby. If we go back to the Giacomo win, Giacomo, who was 4th that day, along with Wilco, Buzzards Bay, and General John B.
Yeah.
Everybody said it was the worst Santa Anita Derby in years, and that none of those horses were worth a consideration, and all they did was run 1st, 6th, and 7th. And frankly, General John B., whose career was ended by an injury, training for the Derby, he might have been the best of those 4 horses.
So much of that, and you're right, but so much of it was a result of a blistering
meltdown.
Battle.
Absolutely.
And when there was so much respect for Bellamy Road coming off of his 227 buyer speed figure that he put up in the Wood Memorial, and then he didn't make the lead. You had horses like High Fly. You had a lot of horses that were ensuring fast pace, and it was run like a relay race. And Giacomo, who was going to stay, and Mike Smith, and keeping them out in the clear and closing argument. It was an exciting Derby. Going back to this one, though, I see that 151 final time, and only 3 times in the 80-year history of the Santa Anita Derby has that race been run slower than a 150, and this is 151.
No more free CDs from Jerry Moss for you. You won't be no Dottie and Gordo, no lunches with Dottie and front runner.
I really like that. I wish Royal Mo would have got it. I thought he had these coming out the same. It was a case, Gary Stevens. I know he's disappointed Royal Mo didn't have a chance to get in, but I'm sure they're sitting back thinking, go ahead, everyone, discount this. Short changes, maybe they can pull off another jockey.
I will tell you one thing. Gormley, Royal Mo is probably very happy. He should be very happy that he's not running because, frankly, he must have had a seat in coach on Southwest making the trip because he doesn't look all that comfortable out there these last few mornings. But Gormley does, and Gormley's doing something that I always catches my eye, and that's pawing at the ground. When you see a horse like dig his toes in and like basically attack the dirt.
Not the Zenyatta nervous twitch you're talking about.
No, not
the prancing that was always misconstrued as like a runway walk. That was a nervous twitch.
This is what they call pawing at the ground.
Yeah.
And he has gotten better every morning that he's been here, much the same way, frankly, that the big filly, the Paradise Woods, she also, day after day, has gotten better each pass around the racetrack with each passing morning. Gormley looks the part, and I probably will end up putting a saver on him. Like a $20 win bet, because if he were to win at 23-1, I gouge my eyes out.
What did we say half an hour ago? That you can't use everyone, and you have to, and you have
yes,
to.
You can.
You can't. You have to draw a line somewhere. For me, in this case, with the California.
If I had your bankroll, I would use them all.
$2 figure, go home and call it a day. With Gormley, though, what I do like is that he did it the right way, and the adjustment. And you saw Espinosa give him that real jerk and got him back off the pace in the early part of the Santa Anita Derby. The training that John Sheriffs has done with him, they have maximized his potential to where I don't know if he's good enough to win a Kentucky Derby. I don't know if he's good enough to hit the board. I think he's moving in the right direction, and he has the right style and the development from when he was mixing it up early and when he was in that pace duel in the San Felipe with Mastery and he was cooked early on. The fact that they were able to go back to the drawing board. I hope John Sheriff gets enough credit for this. Using that tongue tie, getting Victor Espinosa to jerk him back off the pace, and he was still responsive and finished the way he did against slow Santa Anita Derby. I told you what I felt about the Santa Anita Derby, but the work he's been able to do with Gormley and the fact that they've been able to adjust his running style was impressive.
I suppose one other horse, before I ask Craig about what's going on in terms of R&D and product development with the app and with the product in general, we should mention Hent as well. And this is a big, handsome chestnut, a street boss that is out of an AT&D mare, and certainly looks the part. Another one of the Calumet horses. He's a horse that's going to be probably about 15th early.
That feels right.
Florent Giroux aboard, and he can navigate riding him like it's a turf race. I took an interest in him. He's been getting hot in the morning, including on cool mornings. He's got a lot of kidney sweat. He's got neck sweat. And I haven't had a chance to ask Scott Blasi if that's just something that's become a trait.
Right.
But he's got his supporters, and he's another horse I'm sort of on the fence about in terms of building tries and using him in the third leg. I wrote about him a little bit on the Express Bet Wagering Guide, and I may be using him. I'm just one of those horses that you make a decision when you're punching the ticket. Craig, what's going on when it comes to the product?
Yeah, so we've launched last week in beta now. RaceLens has there's a mobile phone friendly version, so it's really nice to have. We made it have the look and feel of an app, and it's basically a responsive design. So whether you go on a PC or on a tablet, or you pull up RaceLens on your phone, it knows how to fit it on the page. And so with the phone, it does look like a mobile app, and we have everything in there. We have it labeled beta because there's a couple of minor bugs that are getting fixed, and the only kind of piece we still have to put in it is the individual research when you do the drill downs for that. But adding angles, doing summary research, looking at the PPs the way that you had the settings when you were on your PC at home, those things will be saved for you. We have an abbreviated look at the PPs, and then also you can hit the print button and it'll generate the PDF to look just like it looks on your computer screen. And so one of the nice features is the True Odds to have it on the phone when you have you can have the data grid or the screen. There's just a toggle that it goes back and forth. So it's nice if you forget, you did your handicapping, but forget how the pace might play out, you just bring that up on your phone, check it out, or anything else that you've done. So it's really nice. That piece is winding down now, and then a lot of the we've had some things on the back burner from ideas we've gotten from customers. So I always encourage them to send us their ideas, and we've already added tons of angle criteria, and we're going to keep adding more. And so the product is, like we said, it's growing all the time, and it's going to get better and better. And everyone who uses it, just let us know about those things, and we're going to keep adding as we go along.
Well, and anybody that has ideas, some terrific comments on the chat as well, suggesting the angles and posting them on the forum. That's a good idea. I do want to answer Liz's question about Tecalita in the Oaks. We just saw it right after we had wrapped up on the Oaks. There is a huge angle tomorrow that people aren't talking about. Shoot. Tecalita and Salty on Cinco de Mayo.
Considering I'm going to probably have to do the walkover with Antonio Sano in Spanish and with Tacalita, Salty, Cinco de Mayo. Sounds like a plan.
Right?
All in.
There you go. No, Tecalita, it's funny. I talked the other day. I was leaving the track, I think it might have been over the weekend, and I saw Mike Matt, and he and I talked after she upset the forward gal, and I can't see her honestly, and he thinks she's going to sit beautifully behind the speed. It's just a question of whether she's good enough, and I certainly don't. I just don't think that she's of this class. I think she's a filly. You'll see her win something like the Indiana Oaks. That's the kind of filly she is. But she's very nice. She's already exceeded expectation, as has Jordan Penny, who's just a blue collar filly. They really don't talk about fillies as being blue collar. Only gelding.
You have to be careful.
Blue collar gelding.
You don't want fillies.
So lunch pail filly.
I like that she runs to the level of her competition. That's what I like about Tacalita in terms of that consistency. You toss her debut. Aside from that, 6 starts, first or second in each of those, and whether you're talking about an unrated stakes race or maiden win, even your second place finish to Salty in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, she runs to the level of her competition, which is always going to make a horse like this dangerous in any kind of race, or at least a factor. I think she'll bring her best, try her hardest. It's like you said, I don't know if it's good enough.
If there is a filly, by the way, and I forgot to mention this when we were doing it, if there's a little bit of a goofy filly that's going to be a monster price, that could be that clunk up horse, the same way we talked about Sonneteer and looking at Lucky, etc. Wicked Lick from Brendan Walsh. Brendan Walsh is just maybe the most underrated horseman in the game.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
He does an unbelievable job with all kinds of horses, and I will not be surprised if Wicked Lick shows up and manages to grab a significant share, 3rd or 4th, or maybe certainly the Super High Five. Don't forget Super High Fives in the Derby and the Oaks. Don't forget about the Oaks Woodford Derby Pick 3, a very fun bet. And in fact, Satish Sanan back with me tomorrow morning to open the show. Satish will give us his Oaks Woodford Derby Pick 3.
Your eyes crossed yet?
Not yet.
We have enough for you to preview and handicap moving forward over the next 48 hours, 2 of the greatest days in thoroughbred horse racing.
Not until we tell people who we like in the sprint, because that may be the toughest race on the card on Saturday. Tougher than the Derby.
It's always a fun race.
Craig, you started off.
It's a fun race.
Yeah, that one actually I didn't handicap that race. I barely had time to do the ones we went over today. So
well,
that's what tomorrow's for.
Now we got to get it. You got to get it in. To me, to that question about the toughest race on the card, on the weekend, it's Churchill Downs handicap at 7-8. Masochistic is going to be a short price again, and he feels like a horse with a black cloud over him at this point.
Yeah, there's going to be, and while he has all the back class in the world, he's fast and one of the best sprinters in the country, I would be taking a stand against coming off that second place finish in the Triple Bend. And as you mentioned, Jeff, the quality of sprinters going to be locking up with on Saturday. I think you can finish it again to going 7-8. I don't love that number 2 post position as quick as he is. Disappointed in the Breeders' Cup Sprint as far as I was concerned, and I don't know that ship gets righted just yet.
The one thing he's got going for him is that there is not, and Craig, maybe you can just spot this immediately off of the True Odds and off of the race projector. There does not seem to be an outlandish early pace on in here, and I suppose Bluegrass Singer from the outside could get involved. He had a very nice work here the other morning. I thought he looked, in fact, there it is, that 59-2 best of 21 breeze. That came on Sunday, and also with moisture in the racetrack, actually, notably a Bluegrass Cat out of an untitled song. This is Dale Romans for Mrs. Vogel, Cross Sabres. He's the other speed, one of the other speeds. I don't see a preponderance here of horses. I mean, the one thing that, from that standpoint, that Masochistic has got going for him is that he could control the pace from that 2-hole.
Yeah. So when you look at I have the True Odds up. You can see that the pace doesn't project to be very fast as far as the pace figures are going. So you see a 107. I mean, when you see these races that are 118, I mean, a lot of times the early pace will be in the 120s. If this was a race like the Breeders' Cup Sprint or something. So that, I mean, it does look like there are a couple of horses that can stick with them, the 3 and the 9. But I know Limousine Liberal can show some speed at times. But Racelens does like the 2, but I can see why people would knock the horse possibly. The other horse that you can see just when you compare the morning line odds to the adjusted True Odds is number 5, Clearly Now. He's one that could maybe be a price that's worth playing at.
Oh, and as you can see, and the reason I think that this is an interesting race, you look at those adjusted odds, and you can see that there's some real opportunity in here. And if Masochistic faces some pressure, he's 7 years old now too. Yeah. And he's just not the same horse that he was at his best. Basically a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I think he's vulnerable favorite, and the more I looked at that race, it looked to me like 7 or 8 horses were eligible to win.
Liberal, make it tough. A4 coming from off the pace. It depends. Again, it's another.
He'll press. He can press. He's a horse I've loved from day one, and he just has not lived up to expectation. That King's Bishop, that's a beat I will not. I thought he was a winner that day. I mean, I did fine. I got him underneath Run Happy, but I thought he was moving like a winner for a while. It's a terrific race, and just one of so many opportunities that Stats Racelens can help you with. And gosh, this has been a lot of fun. I wish everybody the absolute best of luck. I appreciate all the several hundred people that joined us tonight. You can join me tomorrow, 9 to noon, Sirius XM or at speedvic.com. And we'll be handicapping with virtually everybody. Jonathan Kinchin and Nick Tamaro will be here. We'll go through all the CRF boys will come through, Grenig and Privman and Welsh, Satish, as I mentioned, and many, many more. And we'll try to, utilize as much info as we can. Maybe you'll show up for an opinion or two.
My meetings have meetings, but if I can break away for a few minutes,
All right.
I will be here and join you tomorrow morning.
All right. Well, Craig, thanks so much, and we thank everybody at Equibase, of course, Stats Race Lens, and ExpressBet, and TVG, wherever you're accessing the product. It's there to help you understand the game better and add layers of comprehension to this great game, the best game played outdoors.
This was so much fun, and to see this kind of turnout and that type of excitement, because we're on the eve of the Oaks and following the Derby, and another terrific tool to uncover a gem or two on two of the most competitive days of racing. It only takes one. That's right. It's been so much fun learning more about Stats Race Lens and some of those analytics and deeper digging of those statistics. Craig, thanks so much. Steve, again, for your patience, and to those who joined the webinar for your patience. Thank you 1,000 times.
Laffit Pincay the third, and your dad's in town.
Dad's here.
He's doing some promotion for an experience group.
He's like last week he told me he was coming into town. He is the happiest retired 70-year-old bachelor on the planet. Happier now than he was in his riding career. I kid you not.
Well, he doesn't
going on 30.
Well, he doesn't have to eat the 3 peanuts he used to eat anymore.
He's still in the gym. He takes care of himself. Dad is so happy. It's just unbelievable. I'm more proud of him in his retirement than I was during the course of his career, and that's a true statement.
Watch for Laffit. The NBC coverage, by the way. Want to give everybody an update?
Tomorrow we get started, NBCSN for the Kentucky Oaks. Now we do get interrupted at some point. There is some English Premier League, so it's a little bit off and on tomorrow, but a solid run-up right through the Kentucky Oaks, and then we're on all day on Saturday. And as you know, Steve, normally for the undercard Derby Day on NBC, we're on NBCSN for 4 to 5 hours. This year, NBC comes up at 2 o'clock, and we'll go right through 7 o'clock. So about 5 hours on NBC Saturday for the Derby coverage. Some great stories. Antonio Sano's story, a story behind the chassis, some great features, all the live racing throughout the course of the program on Saturday, and really, really excited about being part of this particular broadcast and doing another Derby.
Outstanding. Plus, obviously with some added English hooligans.
We're going to do our best. Mr. Cinco de Mayo.
Tottenham. I'm rooting for Tottenham. Tottenham. The Hotspurs. Everybody, have a great night. Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to getting together. I don't know if are we doing a Preakness get together?
Can we?
Yep. 2 weeks. That's a yes.
There's no Thursday. I'm not committed to an NBC show Thursday week of the Preakness, if that helps.
You are, however, committed to going to the corner stables for ribs and crab cakes.
Now I've arrived. Now I've officially
There
arrived.
you go.
The official invite.
We'll go to G&M. We'll go to G&M one night in Linthicum Heights, and then we'll go to Timonium and go to the corner stables.
Just tell me where.
Watch for Laffit Pincay the third hosting the you and who, Tarico and
Tarico, and Randy and Jerry, they'll be doing their thing. Chris Avoda on the undercard, and the full cast, and Kenny Rice and Donna Brothers Pony back on the pony as always. Bob Newmeyer, Eddie Olczyk, getting into it, arguing, debating the entire day, handicapping. There's really great team both in front of and behind the camera to work with.
And I'm sure there'll be some of that frivolous fashion coverage.
Yes, of course, it's Derby. It's the Derby. Part of it, that's what part of it is. Why do you think the attendance is up to 160,000? People see it on TV. They say, that's on my bucket list. I'm getting a hat. I'm spending God knows how much on an outfit, and we're going to the Derby.
What are you wearing then? What's your Derby,
no hat.
your Derby suit? What do you outfitted by whom? What was your
outfitted by nobody?
Little Brioni action?
No,
Huh?
Not excited.
Huh?
Nothing that exciting.
All right. LP3, everybody. Laffit Pincay the third, Craig Walker, and for everybody at Stats Race Lens. Thanks so much. Get lucky.
Thanks, everybody.
In Kentucky.
Thanks, guys. Good luck.
Thanks, Greg.